Hello everybody and welcome to week 4. It's really great that we are now at the final stage of our project. So the assignment for this week is that based on the comments or feedback you got from the group discussion online, I want you to make the final versions of your either narrative images or comics. And obviously for this process, you need to use the storyboards and the planning that you've already made. Just to remind you, the choice of materials for this is more or less open. We're trying to focus on handmade work for this course. So just please look at the materials list again if you're not sure about what options there are, because all the options are listed there. I would say that the typical size, I guess, for something like this would be either A4 or possibly A3. It just a little bit depends on you and how you prefer to work. But yeah, I wouldn't think that you need to make anything any larger, and probably smaller than A4 is not really a logical idea. It's quite hard to draw well when it's less than A4. So those are my recommendations for that. So as part of this process, of course, it's logical that you're going to be adding more details perhaps, or the other thing that often happens is that as you're drafting the final version, you might want to make some changes or some improvements, and all of that is like perfectly normal. Another practical thing that I can suggest as part of this process is when you need to redraw the storyboards or sketches as something that's larger sized. A practical idea is to use a light box, but in general, you can just scan the storyboard and then you can print it at a larger scale. It doesn't have to look good, and then you can just use it with a light box and put another piece of paper, a blank piece of paper over the top, and just trace it. The next part of what you need to do, once you have the images at a larger scale and you're kind of ready to ink it, or you're ready to use the kind of more permanent medium, I would definitely like you guys to think about testing the material, particularly if you, for example, if you're using ink or you're using gouache and you don't have much experience with it, or you haven't painted with it very much before. I definitely recommend maybe doing a few tests and just checking that the material is working the way you want it, and it's just a smart idea to kind of test maybe drawing one section of an image with this material, just to kind of understand how it works a bit better if you're not so familiar with it. The second thing I wanted to mention is about a color palette, because in theory the storyboards that you have are black and white, and now for the final version obviously you have the option of working in color. I think I have already said this. I am a big fan of working with a limited color palette. I just think that the results are always stronger. And I made some examples for you guys. So the first example, these are the type of color palettes that I often use. These are the type of options that I use. Quite often, to kind of challenge myself, I make a color palette that has no black in it, just because it is an interesting, it's an interesting visual feeling, and you don't have to use black. I think people always assume that every picture needs to have black as the darkest color, but this is not true. I just thought I would make an example for you guys of a simple color palette with no black. So you basically have 3 main colors. You have this burgundy or maroon, and then you have orange, and then you have like a slate blue. And the other thing I wanted to show you with this type of like limited color palette, it doesn't mean that you can't use tones in the same color family. So for example, I have 3 colors here, but then I've given you some examples of darker and lighter tones that match the main colors. So actually you have a lot more possibilities than it sounds, maybe, because you can you can use the lighter or darker versions of those 3 main colors. And the second option I wanted to show you is just like what I consider to be a more classic option, and it's maybe the simplest one. And again, maybe for this project it's a good idea to choose something like this. It's basically just black and white, ranging from deepest black to the lightest white. I didn't really put white in the example, but obviously you can use white for that combination, and then use one key color. In this case I've chosen something like a fluorescent green, but the key color could be any color. So I just thought I would show you that, and maybe it helps people to visualize what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this limited color palette. As an example, I can show you these sets of sketches that I turned into a completed image. And actually the sketches were already 2 colors, but just for the final version I kind of decided that I liked this combination of this like maroon or burgundy and blue, but I wanted to bring in a slightly different shade of blue. And then I also worked out that this kind of dark peachy color would complement this reddish maroon quite well. So that's just an example of what I'm talking about. And it takes it a little bit further away from reality, which sometimes can be a good thing. Okay, and then in the third part of the process, I can't really say anything else about this. You just need to get the images finished. And then just so it's clear for this week about what you need to produce. So you have a choice of 3, as you already know. So you need a completed, totally finished version of either 1 single image with narrative, 2 or 3 images with narrative, and short comics. A little bit of advice about the process. Just try and do everything step by step. It's better maybe if you plan your week, and so you think about like what you need to do first, like the first part of this task, and you do that on one day, and then you have a bit of a break, and then you come to the second part, and then to the final part, just so that you have the chance to do it carefully and just in stages. As I said previously as well, just make sure that you know what materials you're using, that you've had time to test them. Like being spontaneous can be great, but I definitely think for this type of project, it's good to kind of know what you're doing. One small final technical point, I guess, is think about the paper choice. Like for this project, I would assume, even if you have been working in a sketchbook before this, for example, that you're not going to be working in a sketchbook anymore for the final versions. Pay attention to the paper that you're using. So please don't use like this typical printer paper. You need to actually choose better quality paper. And that's basically it. I don't have any recommendations for artists to look at this week, just because you guys are the artists this week. I'm just wishing you all a lot of luck, and I am very keen to see what results you have in the end. And we will see each other soon.